Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's the Jade Gemini. This afternoon I'm super excited to go and bring you a review of this guy right here. This is the Microtech UTX-85 2. But this review will cover any UTX-85 for that matter. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what I like, what I love, what I dislike, and if it applies, what is rubbish about this Microtech. Before we do that though, let's go ahead and get some size comparisons out of the way so we can get an idea of what size this knife is. So next we're going to go ahead and, first we're going to compare it next to a knife that most people have had in their hands or have in their collection. And this is of course the Benchmade Bugout. And I think that this is kind of a great representation just right off the bat of what this size of knife is. So this is a full-size knife, but it's not a large knife. It's not in the size of something like a Hinder XM 18 or something like that. This is more perfectly aligned with that sort of bug out size, as you can see, with about a 3-inch blade, maybe like 3.15-inch blade, and then you also have a long handle. And as you can kind of see here, that is one thing that sometimes people will say with any OTF, the blade to handle ratio. But as you can see, some common knives that we use every single day aren't too far off from it as well. So just something of an observation here. Next thing that we're going to compare it to is the common 93mm Victorinox. Definitely more of a compact knife, but you can still get an idea of what size we're looking at here. And then I brought this for size comparison, but I feel like this one's a little bit more obscure because, it's basically the size of the Bugout, and, but this is the Chavez Ultramar Street Redemption 229. And then the next thing we're going to do is get some thickness out of the way. So, as you can see here, overall thickness isn't really that bad. Blade thickness is a little thicker than your Bugout, I would say, but I wouldn't call it super thick. I would say it's like a working perfect mix between thick but not too thick, right? And then thickness wise, I mean, that chassis has to be a little thicker to get that blade in there. But actually, when you're looking at it, it's not too much thicker than this Bugout right here. And I know these are aftermarket scales, but basically where they plateau out, the standoffs are the same. So even this aftermarket scale will represent the overall thickness of the Bugout on the stock scales. It'll just feel a little thinner in hand because the regular scales are contoured, as these are slab-sided and milled. But yeah, that is the overall thickness out of the way. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So the first thing that I do like about this knife a lot is just the materials that are being made or that are being used. They're materials that other people use as well, but they're definitely premium materials, no doubt about it. You got M390 steel, which there's a lot to love here. It is that sort of high performance super steel that we end up having. It almost seems boring these days that just about every single knife is in M390, right? M390 here. The M390 is sort of American brother, CPM 20CV right here, so same sort of compound, just made by Crucible instead of Bowler as the M390 is. But you get the idea. This is still a really great premium steel. It has very, very good stain resistance. It has good wear resistance, keeping an edge for a very long time. Sharpening is kind of but that's like a lot of super steels unless you get a lot of carbon, in them. And toughness is it's not great, but it's not bad. It's just, fine for an EDC type steel. Same thing here. You have aircraft grade aluminum that is done throughout the whole entire chassis of the knife, so that is good to go. It makes it lightweight, which is the next thing that I will talk about. Is this knife is overall very lightweight. It's not next to the Bugout lightweight, but when you carry something like this that's about 4.5 to 5 ounces, probably 4.5, this thing feels like a absolute, beast when it comes to this. So I'd say this is right at about that 3 ounce range, and this is getting that ultra light. So basically this is very lightweight when you feel it in the hand. You're not going to be complaining in any sort of way. And we'll kind of come back to some other things of how that overall works with the knife. The next thing that I do like a lot about this is just the fact that this is sort of the benchmark that your OTF is set by, the Ultratech, right? Or this UTX-85, and 85% of the overall size of an Ultratech, which is where that number comes from, is basically, the standard, like the Chris Reeve knives of OTF. It's the standard that all others are set by, right? And so there's nothing that you're going to have any sort of problems with. Reliability, quality, all really, really great with this. The next thing that I like a lot is this clip. I've always liked these clips. They're very easy to get into the pocket. They have the secondary retention that I can go ahead and press into your pants, and they carry decently deep. You just have a tiny little bit, which I feel like for the tactical operations, right, or whatever. The fact of the matter is that it just has enough for these jumpings to be grabbed easily out of the pocket, but still only this much of the knife is showing, which is hardly noticeable. It's this tiny little square and this little pokey thing, which you aren't going to see. So it's pretty stealthy or deep-ish carry as is, and also it doesn't really create too much of a hot spot if you are bearing down on this. The next thing that I do like a lot is the fact that with this knife, it is quite ergonomic, which you wouldn't think this like rectangular slab would be too ergonomic. Something like this, which is still kind of a slab, but in a different way. But it has this big finger choil and this sort of swoop back here, and you can lock your finger into that forward choil. And I feel like the ergonomics on the Benchmade Bugout are really nice. It's more of a simple shape, but you got these swoops that fit into your palm and your fingers fit around, and then the sort of very slight curvature of the spine. With this is definitely more of a slab sort of, coffin type handle, but there's lots of little nuances. This barely bend right here that you get, this sort of section right here, and especially on this version, the UTX-85 2, or the Stepside as they call this extra milling right here adds a little bit more of a section that flares out and then comes in, and adds extra traction. So this just means that it's actually kind of comfortable in the hand, and even though it is sort of straight, your hands sort of lock in and the knife doesn't move. I don't feel like I'm ever worried about I'm going to slip up on the blade or anything like that. Really, really good to go. So those are all the things that I do like about the knife overall. The materials that are being used here are great. You're going to get a quality product. That is something that to that quality product that I do love is a little bit more is the consistency. Anytime you get a Microtech, you're basically going to know that the edges are going to look the same on all of them, right? You're going to have good grinds up here on these swedges, although they're not exactly perfect. This one seems a little higher than this one, right? A lot of this stuff is done by hand, but still, it's still quality, right? Same thing, especially with the aluminum, right? And everything like that. So there is just a lot of consistency that goes into the knives itself, and that is somewhat of what you're, paying for when you do pay for a Microtech. And that leads me into what first I love about this knife. And that is just, fit and finish. Not only is it consistently good, right, but the fit and finish here is really, really great, especially with aluminum. A lot of the time I find with aluminum, especially with right here, I have this Victorinox Alox, which has the aluminum scales. Sometimes you'll see these dents and dimples and sort of areas right here where it's sort of like the ano is coming off and everything. On this knife, Or you have these aftermarket scales which take a slab of aluminum and mill them. And these scales by Aimfront are actually very, very good. But you can see there's like little dents that come from the factory all over. It always seems like any aluminum knife that I get from any sort of company, there's always these sort of dings and dents and imperfections. And it's almost like you can't cleanly mill aluminum like you can cleanly mill titanium. But Microtech disproves that. Every time I've ever had a Microtech, everything is so crisp and clean and perfect. And the finishing is great. Just the way that everything is done. There's so much attention to detail. And again, that sort of leads into the amount of time it takes them to mill one chassis, right, is pretty intense. The tolerance as well, I mean, there's a little bit of blade play up and down, you know, with this, which is to be expected with an OTF. But again, the fact that, you know, when you fire this blade, it has enough tolerances that the blade is not going to accidentally hit into the bottom of the chassis and dull the knife. You know, just little things like that really make the quality outstanding on a Microtech, and you're like, whoa, okay, this is that next level up, you know what I mean? If you're coming from something like a nice, but, you know, like a Wii or, you know, Kaiser or, you know, something like that, a Spyderco, Benchmade, right? When you get this, you're like, oh, okay, now we're at that next level. This makes a little bit more sense. I also absolutely have always loved the jimping. It's some of the best jimping that there is. Again, this is sort of a slab-sided, you know, knife as it is for the standard version, but this jimping just locks in, and you are not going to move with this, whether you're doing reverse grip for whatever reason, right, or just to grab it out of your pocket, or again, your fingers sort of resting back here. Whatever you're going to do, that jimping really locks in and keeps you securely on the knife. And the extra added traction to these slabs, step sides, really help as well, and just sort of break up the knife and add a lot more interest as well. The next thing that I do love is just this look, especially. I mean, this knife, let's be honest, when you're talking about a all blacked out, you know, Ultratech or UTX-85 or anything like that, and you think of Microtech in general, you think ultra tactical, right? Bravo 6 going dark, like that level of tactical, right? So, I mean, to that point, it's still a really, really great, useful knife. It's something that I love about this is it's so great for EDC. I mean, think about this. When you have this knife in pocket, the Bugout is not a complaint to carry in any sort of way. But look at how much smaller in thickness the UTX-85 is compared to the Bugout here. And it's not too much thicker. I mean, this one does swell a little bit more than your standard UTX-85. But still, I mean, that's barely anything. You're not going to feel that. But what this means is you just have almost like more like this Victorinox. You just have this slim little rectangle thing that is in the pocket, and it hangs in the very corner, and it's gone, right? Absolutely easy. And so with it being lightweight, it being thin, it being not tall, it is just an absolute master of EDC to carry and to use as well. This is a really useful, simple blade shape that is somewhat almost like the pen blade. It's not as low with the point of the cutting axis, but still, it is really, really good for EDC task. That's a drop point, so you don't have to absolutely cant up like this. You can cut pretty easily. Again, it's thin enough, and especially with the swedge, it slices through material really well. And what I also love is that it comes really, really super sharp, which might sound silly, but there are a lot of knives that come that have a, you know, messed up apex, or maybe this is really sharp up here, but this is dull down here, and little things like that. Again, with that consistency and everything, you're not going to have to worry about that with Microtech. Of course, the thing I haven't talked about, and that's the biggest thing, is that just the fact that this is a OTF, right? The fact that this is just so fun to sit here and fidget, play around with, have fun, as well as just the ease of open it up, you hit it, you don't have to worry about the detent not being firm enough or anything. As long as this is oiled and not dusty or dirty, you push up, bang, cut, you pull back, okay, it's back in, and it's in your pocket, right? So not is it really fun, it also has that second cool factor to it, but there is an air of simplicity and reliability where it's like you push up, it comes out, you pull back, it goes back in. Also, as a working tool, this is actually really a strong platform. I don't think a lot of people talk through the strengths of an OTF, but basically you have a solid chunk of steel that interfaces with the back of this blade and forces it into place with spring pressure, essentially. And that's only alleviated when you pull the spring all the way back, and then it goes to here, and an actual part of the mechanism in here moves that out of the way and allows the blade to fly back. What that means is when you're cutting, if you were batoning, if you're doing crazy stuff, not that you would, but if you had to, there is no stop pin and liners and a pivot that could maybe come loose and all that. It's just solid aluminum. So you'd have to bend this solid piece of aluminum for this to break. And again, you'd have to absolutely warp if you had to pound this in or do stabbing motions or anything, right? Again, I'm not in tactically trained in any sort of way, but just as even a working knife, you know that you have that confidence that it is going to be strong and it's going to survive. Another thing to love is the fact that Microtech has a great warranty. I've had a knife that I got from them that you can actually replace their blades for a cost, of course, but it's nice to know that you're going to have something that you can hand down and is going to last forever, not something from, as great as Riyadh is, one of the best, right? If you damage the blade, I'm pretty sure there's no sort of like blade replacement or anything if you were the one to damage that. And I've even had situations where I've got a Microtech and there was chipping from the sort of Cerakote or DLC or whatever they use on here up the side of the blade. And I'm like, for the price that I was paying for that, I really feel like that's unacceptable. And they took and they replaced the blade like that for free. I just paid the shipping, right? And so that's actually a good warranty. A lot of people might say, oh, well, I'm not really quite sure about, Microtech. I've heard things about them, but from my own personal experience, at least, they've been really, really great. The last thing I will, before moving on, say I love about this is just the overall, like I said, cool factor. I've never had a knife that I've taken to, my team manager at work. Said, hey, look at this cool thing I got. And he's like, whoa, that's way, way cool. That is super cool. Another person I show them where I just, kind of show them something and they're like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. That's the favorite. I want one of those so bad, right? There's just this cool factor that even if you're not a knife person, you don't get it. You don't understand where the value is, in something like this, right? Or something like this. When you show them, they're like, oh, okay, cool. But when you pull this out and you do that, their eyes, light up and it is just instantly wow, right? And I think it's fun to have people kind of bring in and enjoy what you enjoy, right? I mean, you are getting this for you, but at the same point, it is really cool for other people to like, what you like as well. So that is all the stuff that I do love about this knife. Like I said, overall quality, consistency of quality, right? Overall design of this knife. Of course, the actual strength of the mechanisms and the engineering and just the fun, as well as the fun of sharing it with other people and them seeing what's cool about that as well. All are things that I love about the UTX-85 and the fact that it's a little bit more compact size and thinness and everything make this actually one of the best EDC knives that you can get. Now, there are some things, of course, that are negative about every knife. The first one I would say is the stock is a little thick, right? Especially around here, you can see how much thickness is on that tip. Of course, that does mean it is something that you can rely on, but at the same point, that does mean that it is going to be something that once the blade does go dull, the geometry is not going to continue to do that slicing for you. You're going to have to keep that edge sharper sooner to keep the blade in action than being able to fall back on a thinness to be able to cut. So that is something that, because there isn't very much height to this blade and there is thickness to this blade, you're going to notice that, when it starts getting duller sooner. The next thing, to that point, one thing I do like is, at least about this blade shape, is easy at least to sharpen. Some of the other ones, like the four-sided spear points, can be a little hard because it's, top to bottom. And the Tonto, of course, is really, one of the more challenging blades to sharpen for someone who is, average, at least like myself. This, I could strap it up on the strap, from Ben, it's NAFs right behind me, right? Or the bottom of a coffee cup, although it would take forever. It'd probably need an actual stone, right? And that's just, nice that this is a little bit more of a simple and familiar, blade shape, that whenever it does come time to sharpen this, you're going to be good to go. But back to what I, dislike. The next thing to dislike about this is just the elephant in the room. This is an automatic knife, and so these are not legal everywhere. Again, there's things that I don't think that's necessarily needed in this modern day and age for it to be illegal in certain places, but again, that is not my call to make. All I can tell you is that this knife is probably not legal in most places, and only certain places, or they may be legal to own, but not legal to carry, or in some places not legal to own at all. Luckily, down here in Tampa, I can do both. I can own and I can carry this outside, since this isn't over 4 inches long. Now, again, I'm no lawyer, right? But that's how I understand things. But I would always check, before you get one, and know your local knife laws. What that also means I don't like is, because of this, if you buy one of these and you are someone who is in our hobby that wants to have value in their knives, the buy, sell, trade type thing, could come up. There could be some release that you just have to have and, you want to sell. And these, in my experience, have been a lot harder to move in the past when I've gotten versions that I don't like so much and ended up, going to another owner. Because of that sort of exclusivity of it's legal only in certain places, these can be a little harder to move. This one's so cool, though. I definitely don't plan on ever getting rid of this. The last thing is, and again, this is sort of just more of a to understanding, right? And less of a dislike. Of course, we'd all like things to be cheaper, but I could see the value in these. But prices have went up, where knives that were $235 in the past, $245, right? A couple of years ago, 2017, 2018, right? Pre-COVID, now are going into that $285 for the regular UTX, right? And then for the spicier signature series and things like that, you're looking at $350, $360, right? There's even some versions I just saw today that were nearing the 500 mark in Ultim and MagnaCut. So the prices definitely go up on these. These are a little bit more of a premium knife, and they've definitely felt that burn of the inflation. But that's just kind of to be expected, especially when you're getting something which I do love as well as made in America, right? I love other places, right? And I support, other companies and makers that are, making it happen and stuff like that and being made elsewhere. But it's cool to, see something made where you live as well. So that's always a benefit. As far as rubbish, there's nothing really, rubbish to say about this knife in, any sort of way, except the fact that, I think they look cool, so I like them, but I understand where these are not easily accessible unless you get a specific bit to take them apart. And some people could really see that as a big turnoff, not being able to get into the knife. Now, on the flip side, this is pretty easy to maintenance, which is something to like. You just spray some Remington gun oil in there, shake it free, then have an air blower dust can for like computer keyboards. You do that in there, and you're good to go. So at least it is simple, but again, then you also have to buy these specific things that you might not use in your normal knife collection, just specifically for this. So there's kind of a duality or two minds to kind of think about that. But overall, just to kind of wrap things up, this is a slim, trim, small, very highly made with milling and intricacies, great EDC knife that is unique, that is fun, that other people like and they get when you pull this out. And it's just something that is really, really special and cool. And you're getting one of those cornerstones of the knife community, the Chris Reeve, the UTX. I don't know, maybe a Hender, right? A Swiss Army knife, right? There may be something else out there that I'm forgetting, right? But it's like one of those really major, super important, you know, when you think about, you know, watches, right? You think about the Speedmaster and the G-Shock and the Cartier de Santos and maybe an AP Royal Oak or something, right? This is one of those. This is one of those in the knife world, right? This is just the little shrunken down, easier to carry version instead of being the big old, you know, one right here. So I would recommend one of these if they're legal in any sort of way. They're fun, they're cool. And I think that as a knife collector, you want to kind of experience what that OTF is all about. So anyways, that is that. I hope you did end up going ahead and enjoying this video and this review. If you do, please go ahead and give a like as it helps the channel, and subscribe. It's crazy to just think that today we had 1,800 subscribers. It seemed like yesterday I just got to 100, and somehow some people are watching, you know, this idiot right here, and we're almost closer to 2,000 than we are 1,000. So I can't thank you guys enough. Of course, if you do have any questions, please comment down below, as it really helps the channel. Of course, most importantly, I hope everybody stays safe and have a great rest of your weekend. Take care. Peace.